Hey y'all, welcome back to art. I'm so sorry that I'm not here today, but I do have something cool planned for you. Before we get started, just make sure that you're sitting on one sit spot with your hands to yourself and that you're not talking while instructions are being given. It's the same expectation as in music class. So what we're going to be doing today is a line challenge. So lines are an element of art and they are in almost every art project that we do. If you at any point need some inspiration of different types of lines, you can look up to the line chart that is on the principal's board. So what you're going to do today is you are actually going to be creating this line art and mixing colors without using paint. So how you're going to do that is you're going to use oil pastels. I'm leaving the oil pastels for you on your tables. They're sorted out by colors and labeled with the colors. If you do notice some that are in the wrong place, you can go ahead and just put them in the right place by reading the label. That'd be awesome, super helpful. But oil pastels are really cool because you can overlap them to blend colors. So here is the finished example of my line drawing, and I'm going to walk you through how to make your own right now. Okay, so you're going to start with a manila piece of paper, and our goal today is actually to blend colors so much that you can't see the color of the paper underneath. So to start, you need to make sure that you put your teacher code with a pencil and your name on the back. So for your convenience, I have written your teacher codes on the whiteboard. So you've got your name and your teacher code on the back. So just check the whiteboard if you need to know what your teacher code is. But here's how we're starting today. You're going to start by breaking your paper up into a bunch of lines. So to do that, I am going to just think of different types of lines that we have talked about in the past. So there's diagonal lines, there's wavy lines, there's even spiral lines. That one looks kind of wild. There's jagged lines, which are zigzag lines. There are messy lines. The problem with doing messy lines is you are going to trace all of this. So whenever you're making it, be very thoughtful about what kind of lines you're doing and make sure that you're going to be able to trace them again. The reason you're starting with the pencil is so that you can erase. Erasers should be in the eraser park because most of our pencils at this point don't have erasers on them. There's also thick lines, dotted lines, dashed lines. You can look at that line chart if you at any point you need some inspiration, but you can just make even random marks as long as they go from one side of the paper to the other, or in some cases just break up and touch other lines, you are good to go. So once you have filled your paper with lines, I choose black as my oil pastel, but you can choose whichever color you want. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to trace all of my lines, pushing hard with my oil pastel. So the cool thing about oil pastels is that they are made up of oil instead of wax like a crayon, so the texture is going to be different and it will likely get on your hands. With the spiral, what I started doing was I started experimenting with thick and thin lines. So I'm going over it a few times and making it wider to make that a thick line. If you want to experiment with line quality, you can definitely do that. But I'm going to just finish tracing all of these. And if you don't get it exact, that's okay, because with your oil pastels, you are going to cover them up. So the cool thing about oil pastels, like I said earlier, is that you can mix them together like paint, but without actually using paint. However, your fingers are going to get a little bit dirty, and that's okay. So I want you to experiment and decide on your own colors. So I'm going to start for my experiment with green. So if your oil pastel looks like this and you need to peel off a little bit of the paper, you totally can. Oops, I peeled it all off. So if you do accidentally peel it all off, it is likely to break, and that's okay as long as you're not breaking them on purpose. So I'm going to start in this section because it's the closest to you and it's easier to see. And I'm pushing nice and hard with my oil pastel. There it goes. To fill in this space. Sorry, I tried to change the camera angle so that it wouldn't bounce so much, but it's really hard when you need both hands to draw it. So. Okay, so I've got it filled in with green. Now I get to decide what my next color is going to be to draw right on top of my green. This is called overlapping, and then I will talk to you about blending. So I'm just gonna go with yellow. Here's the thing about oil pastels. Whatever color you're mixing them with, then it's going to stick to that oil pastel. So if you want to clean it off before you get going, then you can just go on the back of your paper and draw a couple times, and that color should come right off onto your paper. So I'm going to take this oil pastel, take off the paper again. You don't have to do that if it's not really messy. I'm sorry, not really messy, really short. So now I'm taking and I'm pushing really hard on top of this. Not so hard I'm going to break that oil pastel, but hard enough that it's getting inside of the paper grain, and so that I can't see the manila paper under it. So I've done an okay job of filling this in, but here's the next step to make sure that you can't see that paper grain under it, is you're going to take your finger and push on the paper, and all that oil pastel is going to get into those tiny spots that you didn't hit the first time. Your black crayon or black oil pastel is likely to bleed into this a little bit whenever you're smearing it, and that's okay. So there is how I mixed a lighter green. You're going to experiment with mixing all different types of colors. You could try to mix primary and secondary colors. You could try putting complementary colors next to each other, see how it goes. You might make some colors that you don't really like, and that's okay because you have so many spaces. So in here, I've mixed all different type of colors. Even in this space, I mixed the 3 primary colors together right next to each other. This one, I mixed 2 analogous colors. That is a huge word. That means that they're next to each other on the color wheel. We'll talk more about that later. This one, I made my own purple. Ooh, experiment, see if you can do that. This one, I actually made it lighter by adding another color, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want you to try to experiment when you are done. If something like this happens, that's okay. You could cover it up with a different color, but I actually like the way that it looks because it's just that yellow that had some red on it, and whenever I drew into it, it actually turned orange. So that's pretty cool. It's all part of the color mixing process. You're going to turn these in at the end. You can leave your oil pastels on the table because every class is doing something with oil pastels today. So it's fine to just leave them there instead of putting them back. Double check though, make sure that you are using oil pastels. It says oil pastel, and that someone from your table, if you did put them back, doesn't accidentally grab chalk pastels. They're labeled on the bookshelf. But that is your goal for today. I can't wait to see what kind of abstract art you come up with that has different lines and colors. Have a good one.